Sophomores, happy Thursday. Hope you guys are doing great. We are going to finish up the Aeneid today. So you had books 11 and 12 to read, and just going to talk through some of the details and things going on here. So book 11 kind of picks up with Aeneas performing some funeral preparations for Pallas, and what he does is they get Pallas all set up, I guess, to be, and they send him back to his father, so that his father can have his body now that he has been killed. And it's a very, very sad scene, but he is greatly honored in this procession, and there's a huge procession of both Pallas's people and of of the Trojans that go with him. All right, and then the Latins. There are some ambassadors, I guess, from the Latins that ask for a temporary truce, so that they can take care of the dead that have fallen in battle, because if you remember book 9 and then particularly book 10, there's a lot of death, a lot of fighting going on. So Aeneas is very gracious and happy to comply with this. Line 146 in book 11, this request the good heart of Aeneas could not spurn but granted. And once again, you kind of see this pietas being displayed in Aeneas, this duty toward toward the gods and toward his fellow man, as well, and respecting the dead. All right, and the Latins are very impressed by his kindness and his piety in this, and particularly Drances, who's a bit of a cranky old guy. I can relate. Drances is very impressed by Aeneas and praises him as well. And Drances is going to show up in just a little bit later. And then we have this fairly decently long speech from Evander about when he receives Pallas's body back, and of course he is just he's overwhelmed by grief that he's lost his son, because like he says, it's not right for the fathers to bury their sons. It's supposed to be the other way around. And it really reminds me of, for those of you Lord of the Rings fans, back in book 2, when King Theoden has to bury his son. Kind of reminds me of that scene from the Two Towers. But he does take, Evander does take a lot of comfort in the fact that he knows that Pallas died honorably, and he was fighting the very best that he could, and he was fighting very well. He just came up against a stronger enemy, and he kind of makes this something of a hopeful request that kind of at the end of his speech there, 248, he says, I ask no joy in life, I may not, but to take the word to my son far down amid the shades. Basically that Turnis has been killed, so he asks the Aeneas and the Trojans basically to avenge his death. All right, and then let's see here, we have after that, we have this kind of scene of a council in the Latin city, Laurentum, and a lot of people are saying, you know, let Aeneas and Turnus settle this on their own, okay, and particularly Drances, he is very harsh on Turnus, and basically accuses him of being a coward, more or less. All right. And he wants Turnus and Aeneas to fight this out. And also at this time, the Latins receive word. They had sent some ambassadors to Diomedes, who was one of the great Greek heroes from the Trojan War. And Diomedes has settled in, I think, in Italy. And they sent word to him asking for his help, but Diomedes, he refuses. He's basically says he's had enough of fighting with these Trojans, fought them for 10 years. And he has a lot of respect for them, particularly Aeneas, and you know, he looks at some of his fellow Greeks that have returned home, and what a difficult time they have had. Obviously, Ulysses took him 10 years to get home. Then you've got, you know, like Agamemnon getting killed by his wife, and you know, there's just a lot of sorrow that's come from the Trojan War, and Diomedes, he's ready to be done. So he's like, no, I don't care how much you pay me. I'm not coming to fight the Trojans again. And he praises Aeneas for his reverence to the gods. You can see that line 394. All right, and then we've got Drances kind of calling Turnus out, and basically saying this is all Turnus' fault and that he needs to go fight Aeneas one-on-one. And Turnus basically, he doesn't back down from this challenge. He will fight Aeneas if that's what everyone wants, but he you know, he defends his honor, and he basically is saying, you know, I am not afraid of Aeneas, but at the same time, he doesn't think that it's as bad for the Latins as people are making it out to be. He thinks that there's still a lot of strength in the Latin forces, and he believes that they still have a really good chance at defeating the Trojans. All right. Okay, and then we see the Latins make ready for to defend their city, because Aeneas and the Trojans are on the march to come to attack the city. So the Latins make preparations for that. You see in line, in line 652, I guess it is, the young princess Lavinia rode the cause of so much suffering. So you kind of see her almost set up in a similar way to like a Helen, that you've got these two guys fighting over her, these two people groups, and largely because of this woman that they both want to marry. All right. Now, a large difference though. I mean, Helen was, for one thing, she was already married. Lavinia is not actually married, and I think you also get the picture that Helen kind of was rather willing to run away with Paris, whereas you know, Lavinia is much more of an honorable and a dutiful woman. So she is much more of the kind of proper example of how a Roman woman should act, unlike someone like Helen. You know, even though they have some similar characteristics, I guess you could say, as far as the storyline goes. All right. So they make the city ready for defense, and we get a good picture here now of Camilla. And Camilla, let me just tell you, Camilla is hardcore. She is the leader of the Volscians, and she is compared in a lot of ways to like an Amazon warrioress. She is super intense, really good fighter, and she has a little talk with Turnis, and she basically says, "Hey, I will." She offers to defend the city, and Turnis then goes and tries to set an ambush for Aeneas's forces, because Aeneas's forces are kind of divided up into two. And then we have this really interesting kind of interlude. Diana talks to Opus, who is one of her attendants, I guess you could say, and she gives a kind of a backstory on Camilla. And Camilla's father had been kind of an exile, a king who had been sent into exile. At least I think he was a king. I don't know. Anyway, he was sent into exile. And he takes his little infant daughter with him. And there's some really kind of amazing little stories here. Like once he's trying to cross a swollen river, and he doesn't want his daughter to, well, he's trying to swim across, he doesn't want her to get, drowned or anything. So he basically ties her to this spear, and he throws it across the river, and it sticks in a tree. And then he's able to get across to go be with her. And then you get all sorts of little tidbits of her growing up as this really amazing warrioress. So you get this kind of fun little backstory on Camilla, and just how awesome she is. All right, then we have the picture of the Trojans approaching the town. And there's a lot of back and forth in the fighting here. Sometimes the Trojans are ahead, sometimes the Latins, and then Camilla kind of really takes charge, and she starts killing Trojans left and right, and starts really turning the tide for the Latins. But then there's a fellow, Aruns, who manages to kind of shadow Camilla, and he is able to shoot an arrow that kills her, or wounds her, and then she dies. And she basically sends a message with her friend as she is dying to go recall Turnis, because remember, Turnis had gone to set a trap for Aeneas. And then Opus, who is this nymph that's a attendant of Diana, takes vengeance on Aruns and kills him, and he dies basically in with nothing to his name, no honor or anything like that. All right, and then word is brought to Turnis, and Turnis, very grudgingly, of course, he returns to the city because the city is basically now left without Camilla. They don't have a strong battle leader, so he turns back from his ambush. But the ironic thing is, basically right after he turns back from about ready to set the ambush, Aeneas's troops then pass through, and so he misses them. So very fateful timing, you could say. All right, and then book 12, Turnus and Aeneas are are about ready to do a kind of hand-to-hand single combat. All right. And Latinus praises him for his courage, his bravery, even though he does not, want this to happen. Latinus wants Turnus to kind of find somebody else other than his daughter Lavinia. And then Amata, Latinus's wife, the queen, she is very worried for Turnus. She wants him to kill Aeneas, but she's also very worried because she knows Aeneas is a mighty warrior. All right, and then Lavinia is kind of just looking on, as it were, and she is, very moved and everything, but she doesn't. We don't get any words from her. But you've got Turnus is very confident of his ability, and it's kind of interesting too. You see some a bit of kind of racial superiority and racial prejudice here that was somewhat common for the ancient Romans as when they looked to the east. There was a lot of this kind of thing about the Eastern cultures being very weak and effeminate and lavish. And you get that, it's kind of an interesting thing that he says on lines 135. He's talking to his spear. He's a spear that never failed me once when called on. Now the time has come. A champion once carried you, Turnus bears you now. See to it that I smash down that body, talking about Aeneas, and tear away with my strong hand the breastplate of the Phrygian eunuch. So he's calling Aeneas a eunuch, which is a huge insult. And befoul in dust those love locks curled with hot iron, drenched with liquid myrrh. So he's basically he's accusing Aeneas of being really weak and effeminate and just really insulting him, largely because he is, from this eastern country, Troy, well, not a country, but, region. Okay, and then Aeneas gets ready for battle. All right, and then we have the day of the battle dawns, and Juno talks to Jaterna, and Jaterna, remember, is Turnus's sister, and she basically says that there's not a whole lot more that we can do for Turnus, because Juno realizes on line 201, she says that Turnus is meeting a destiny beyond his strength. So there's really nothing that anyone can do to fight fate, to fight destiny. All right. But sometimes you can delay it, and that's kind of what Jaterna tries to do. And then we have Aeneas and the Latinus kind of making their vows as far as how they're going to honor the outcome of this duel. And Aeneas is very, again, showing piety, his duty to the gods, and he says that they will leave and retire to Evander's town if Aeneas is defeated. But if Aeneas wins, this is I think a really powerful section here. 252. If, on the other hand, the day is ours, in other words, that he beats Turnus, conferred by divine victory, as I think, and may the gods confirm it by their will, I shall not make Italians underlings to Trojans. For myself I ask no kingdom. Let both nations, both unconquered, which is huge, both subject to equal laws, commit themselves to an eternal union. I shall give rituals and gods to both. My father-in-law Latinus, let him keep his arms and keep his royal authority. My share will be a town with walls, laid out and built by Trojans. Lavinia will give that town her name. All right. And then Latinus agrees to the terms, and you kind of see some of the different ways in which they ratify these terms and agreements. All right. But those things that Aeneas promises are really really powerful there. All right. Now Jaterna gets involved again. She kind of comes down to this duel, and she disguises herself as a Rutulian named Camers, and she riles up the Latins to she like basically saying, "Hey guys, we don't trust these Trojans. We're gonna lose our homeland. They're gonna basically enslave us. All this sort of stuff." And she riles them up to such a degree that they break this truce that is between the Latins and the Trojans, and they attack the Trojans, and then war just breaks out all over again. All right, so what was meant to be settled by just Aeneas and Turnis now erupts back into what they were trying to avoid, war. All right, and then we have Aeneas. He's basically telling his guys, "Hey, why are we fighting?" But they were getting attacked, and he says that Turnus is he says Turnus is mine. Let's go fight. But unfortunately, Aeneas gets shot by an arrow, and by an unknown individual. They don't know, does not say who shot it. So Aeneas gets wounded and actually has to leave the battle. All right. So you have the Trojans now without their main leader, and as happens often in these epic stories and in ancient warfare, or at least with the epic stories, when the hero is out of the story, his side is going to fare very badly. So the Latins start really beating up on the Trojans, and Turnus starts going crazy, killing people all over the place, like he does. And then line 525, we get Aeneas is being cared for by some of his close friends, Achates and Menesthius. They are trying to help him and get him better, and they just can't seem to get the arrow out of his wound. And they have a kind of more or less a physician there, XI-XII. He says dear to Phoebus, so he's Phoebus was a lot of times associated with medicine, and in particular the god Asclepius. He is one that's also very closely associated with medicine, but Phoebus as Phoebus Apollo as well. But he is unable to get this arrow out. But then Venus kind of intervenes again, and sends it kind of reminds me of the Hunger Games. She basically sends down this ointment, this medicated fluid, it says, to help heal and get that arrow out. And XI-XII uses that, and he says, "No mortal agency brought this about, no art, however skilled. Not by my own hand preserves you, but a greater power, Aeneas. God is here at work. He sends you back to greater actions. All right, so Iapix, Iapix realizes, hey, this was not my power. This is the gods doing. So Aeneas arms back up for battle, and he has this kind of nice little speech to his son, Ascanius. He says, "Learn fortitude and toil from me, my son, ache of true toil, and then good fortune learn from others." So, son, don't get your fortune from me, because it's not so good. All right, so Aeneas then kind of re-enters the battle as best he could. Jaterna, now Turnus' sister, once again disguises herself, this time as the chariot driver for Turnus, named Metiscus. Great name. Not meniscus, that's in your knee. This is Metiscus. And she realizes that, hey, Aeneas is coming for Turnus. So she drives all over the battlefield, trying to make sure that Turnus does not get near Aeneas. So she keeps them apart as best she can. And people are dying left and right all over the place. All right. Then we learn line 744. This is each army's total strength was now engaged. Okay, so both sides are going all at it. And then Aeneas has a thought sent to him by his mother to, he needs to confront Turnus, and he's not able to. So what he does is he directs his troops now to go attack the city, because he notices, hey, there's that city over there, and we're all just fighting each other. I need to go attack the city, because that way I can draw Turnus there, and then we can have our little fight. So the Trojans go and start burning the city. And then we have a very sad scene with Amata, the queen, hangs herself out of despair. It's very, very sad scene. And she thinks that Turnus is probably already dead. She doesn't know, but and she kills herself, which is just a very sad scene. And Latinus obviously is deeply distraught, and Lavinia, both overwhelmed with grief. All right. So Turnus eventually has to come back to the city, and he comes back, and they finally are able to get their little duel underway. All right. So they come together. And line 983, Jupiter held the two pans of a scale in balance and placed in each a destiny, doom for him whose weight would bring death down. All right, so Jupiter is holding their doom, their fate in a balance. And they attack each other, and Turnus, unfortunately for him, his sword breaks, because he had grabbed a sword that was Metiscus' sword and not his own. So he just had a regular guy's sword, and cannot stand Aeneas's god-made shield. So it breaks. He starts running around the little ring they have set up, trying to stay away from Aeneas. And let's see here. And then Aeneas had thrown a spear at him that had stuck into a tree stump. Turnus prays, and the tree stump does not give up the spear, so Aeneas is not able to throw that again, at least not yet. And then Jaterna finally restores to him that his original sword, when she is able to. So now, they both are armed with, just their swords. All right, and then we have the scene with, Jupiter talking to Juno, and basically he says, line, let's see, 1092. He says, "I forbid your going further." All right, so basically you need to stop meddling, and Juno, finally, puts aside her her anger, her wrath toward the Trojans, and she has some good lines in here. Line 11 actually. Actually, 11:10. Sorry. "I yield now, and for all my hatred leave this battlefield. But one thing not retained by fate, I beg for Latium, for the future greatness of your kin. When presently they crown peace with a happy wedding day, so let it be." And remember, Juno is the goddess of marriage and all that. So, "merge their laws and treaties. Never command the land's own Latin folk to change their own name, to become new Trojans, known as Teucrians. Never make them alter dialect or dress." So in other words, don't make the Latins assimilate to become Trojans. Keep the Latin name. That's why it's still Latin that we're learning and not Trojan. All right. Let's see here. "Let Latium be, let there be Elban kings for generation, let Italian valor be the strength of Rome in after times. Once and for all Troy fell, and with her name let her lie fallen." All right, and Jupiter is happy to, agree to her, request, and then we see a lines. This is big. 1142. "Gladdened by his promise, she changed her mind." All right, so, that is huge. So she leaves aside her, her wrath, and that's kind of like the driving force behind this narrative, was her wrath. All right, Jaterna though is very grieved. Jupiter sends the Diri, which are another term for the Furies, down to kind of, distract and dishearten Turnus. And Jaterna recognizes these kind of bird-like creatures, the shape they come in, and, she knows her brother's time has reached its end, and Turnus tries to throw a rock at Aeneas. He is unable to, hit him or do any damage. There's an interesting line, 1229. "He did not know himself," so he starts to kind of lose, who he is, what his strength is, and he just kind of starts not really going mad per se, but, basically just starts losing it. And then Aeneas, is able to, get the spear, and get a spear and throw it at Turnus. He hits Turnus, goes through his shield and everything, and straight into his thigh. It's a crippling blow. And Turnus knows that his end has come. 1266. "Clearly I earned this and ask no quarter. Make the most of your good fortune here." And then he makes an appeal. "If you can feel a father's grief, you too had such a father in Anchises, then let me bespeak your mercy for old age and Daunus," which is his father. "And return me, or my body, stripped if you will of life, to my own kin. You have defeated me. The Ausonians have seen me in defeat, spreading my hands. Lavinia is your bride, but go no further out of hatred." All right, and then we see Aeneas almost, he's almost ready to spare Turnus, but, 1281, "Then to his glance appeared the accursed sword belt surmounting Turnus's shoulder, shining with its familiar studs, the strap young Pallas wore when Turnus wounded him and left him dead upon the field." Now Turnus bore that enemy token on his shoulder, enemy still. All right, and then Aeneas slaughters Turnus as the enemy. All right, and sends his spirit down to the underworld. All right, very stark, bleak ending, and kind of leaves you thinking, like, what is this? You know, Aeneas is often seen as being very, very dutiful, very dutiful to the gods, to his family, to his country, and then he has no mercy here on this this enemy. And it is a kind of a interesting, I don't know if it's really a transformation necessarily, because he's always been a strong, mighty warrior. But it is kind of, it's unsettling, definitely. But it kind of makes you think a little bit. All right. When is the time to show mercy? When is the time to show justice? Did Aeneas do the right thing in not showing mercy? I don't know exactly, but gives you something to think about. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the Aeneid. It is a very foundational work in Roman literature, and in Western literature as a whole as well. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Just a reminder, make sure that you, if you haven't taken those reading checks and done your discussion posts for 11 and 12, make sure you do that. And I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. All right, love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.